Good morning, everybody. I'm going to go ahead and get started. Just a couple of things right out the gate. This is a pretty impressive group, a pretty massive group of people in attendance here. We just hit 100. So if you could stay on mute, I would really appreciate it. We are not all that sophisticated and don't have it to where you can't come off mute, but for this discussion, it is best to stay on mute so we get the best audio for everybody. The other thing I did want to mention is this will be recorded, and it's currently being recorded as we speak. And so we'll be able to share this and reshare this. That was important to us. This will be accessible to you. And we are happy to post the presentation of this after the meeting. That's a common question we get. And just a couple of things here. I was going to pop through the agenda real quick. I'm going to do some introductions of our sites staff, sites authority staff. Cover our objectives, talk a bit about the project overall, make sure you're all oriented on what we're talking about, and then dive into the delivery. That's really what we're here to discuss today, and specifically the reservoir package, which is the most pressing on our schedule, and then talk about our schedule for our upcoming procurements and then next steps for how to stay engaged in sites and our ongoing outreach efforts. Let's see here. One thing I did want to mention is we're not doing a Q&A today. I just think logistically it's really tough on these virtual meetings to administer that. But there are plenty of opportunities to engage with us, and I'll make sure to cover those at the end. So I have a few folks from sites with me today, and I just wanted to make sure to call them out. Our executive director, Jerry Brown, is on the line. He's our fearless leader. I am going to be running this meeting. You're going to be tired of hearing from me in 45 minutes. I'm the engineering and construction manager for sites. I have Allie Forsyth, who is brave enough to have her camera on. Thank you, Allie. And she's our environmental planning and permitting manager. Kevin Spessert, who is our external affairs manager. Joe Trapasso, who works as our program operations manager and our procurement officer, importantly. Marcia Kivett, who is our sites project coordinator, and Terry Boland, who is our board clerk and also helping me on some construction matters. So that's the sites team. We're pretty lean right now. We have a lot of consultants also on the call. I'm not going to introduce them just for time's purposes, but we do have a big team when you look at that. Our objective for today, threefold, just to provide an overview of the sites project. It's been around a while. Most of you probably are aware of what it is, but I'll talk a little bit more about it. We're going to present a spotlight on the sites reservoir package. So that's the nearest term work that's coming up on sites. And then we'll communicate our expectations for follow-on activities and what we're looking at for a procurement schedule. Importantly, talk about process a little bit and when we go dark in terms of communication. So right now we're wide open. We have no open procurements other than one for legal services, which I'll touch on in this discussion. So with that out of the way, I'm diving into our project overview. What is Sites Reservoir? It is a generational project, multi-benefit, water storage, and the goal here is to restore flexibility, reliability, and resiliency in our water supply. The last 3 years have been great examples of how sites would operate from the dry to the wet. These last couple of years in particular, as we have had these massive storms, were opportunities that sites would have really been well positioned to capture. And so, one thing we say in California is there's no such thing as average, and sites is built for those non-average sort of years, the wet years to capture water and the dry years to deliver water. We have very broad statewide participation. We are made up of 30 agencies. We have 2 governing entities The JPA, our Joint Powers Authority Board, has 9 members, and then we have 22 Reservoir Committee members. 22 and 9 does not equal 30, and that's because there is some overlap there. We have some people on our board who are also on the Reservoir Committee. We also have federal and state agencies very involved in our project. Reclamation is an investor in our project, and the state of California is a critical investor in our project for public benefits, including for the environment, flood control, and recreation. Overall, our agencies serve about 24.5 million people and about 500,000 acres of farmland. So that's our participants, and ultimately they're responsible for stewarding water for that many people and for that many acres of farmland, which is amazing and really speaks to the scale and the importance of this project in the state. Having said that, Sites is ultimately a locally led project. We have all of those participants, but ultimately the authority is its own agency, and it is a local leader for this project. And one of our critical core values is respect for local communities. It's just how we do our business. And that really comes down to these 3 key areas. We respect the community, we respect the land, and we respect the water. This project was ultimately, this organization was pulled together from a group of Sac Valley agencies in 2010 to build this project. And it's on those shoulders that we stand today. And so the authority does recognize the significant contributions of the Sac Valley, and we do everything we can to be a good neighbor throughout the project, and contractors will play a huge role in that. I did want to just kind of show our map of what we're building here. Sites is a 1.5 million acre foot reservoir. It would be, depending on how you measure it, the 7th or the 8th largest reservoir in the state when completed. You see these purple blobs here on the map represent our dam sites, dam locations. We show our recreation around the reservoir as well here. And then there's also a lot of critical conveyance infrastructure that's needed for this project to be effective. But an important piece, and I think one that stands out in this map, are these 2 very large canals that are shown here. Those are existing facilities, and they're really critical to our project's success and to making an affordable project. We're trying to be a very affordable project for ag and urban agencies and all of our partners. And a lot of that ability to achieve that comes from these existing facilities. So you see there's the Glenclusa Irrigation District main canal to the east, and the Tamacalusa Canal to the west. And then we build some new conveyance infrastructure, which will be one of the construction packages. Importantly, this is sort of a very high landscape level project. You can see the scale on this map. The reservoir itself is about 13 miles long, which is not insignificant, about 260 feet deep. We also have down to the south a component of our project to connect the Tamacalusa Canal to the Calusa Basin Drain, which ultimately allows us to get Sites water back to the Sacramento River. So these existing facilities are really our connection to the river. Very importantly, the GCID and TC systems operate state-of-the-art fish screens for their diversions on the Sacramento River, very environmentally protective, and those are the diversions that we will use for Sites. How do we pay for it? Obviously a critical question. This is a very expensive endeavor. And our funding portfolio is really largely established. So before we go into construction, we've been funding the project through cash calls from our participants. We will eventually be looking at short-term bank line of credit or notes, depending on what's more economical, and then taking that out with a WIFIA loan, which is fantastic. The project was invited to apply for that WIFIA loan. For construction, We do have a WIFIA loan that we're currently negotiating with the EPA that would fund up to 49% of eligible project costs, or about $2.2 billion. We have Prop 1 funding from the Water Storage Investment Program at $875 million currently. And then the WIN Act funds. So our reclamation partners are investing through the WIN Act. And then any balance there, which is a pretty small amount, would be covered with long-term revenue bonds that the authority would offer. And then the reality here, where we're at right now, funding is limited until mid to late 2025. We're in sort of this cash call mode right now as we wrap up our key permits, agreements, and ultimately as we go to sign contracts sometime in 2025. After that, the funding limitation really goes away and we get into this delivery mode of how quickly can we deliver this project, because time is definitely money, more so now than ever before due to some of the escalation environment. Our permitting is well underway. You got a check mark here by CEQA NEPA, but we're really still working through a lot of this, the items on the screen here. Great progress. Revised draft EIR, supplemental draft EIS action taken in November, and finally EIR EIS November 2023. So, and then our water right application, that's a critical permit. Obviously, our project is not just storage, it's also a new supply. So that application was submitted in May of 2022, supplemented in January 23. The protest period is wrapped up, and we expect a hearing spring or summer of 2024. Endangered Species Act, obviously a critical permit these days. And so we're expected summer of 24 to have those wrapped up. And then our Clean Water Act permits, applications going forward, and expecting permits in early 25. So these are the key sort of existential permits for the project. There's obviously a much bigger list of permits, some of which will fall on the contractor to secure. Our design is well underway. We completed that feasibility level design and associated cost estimate. And we anticipate completing the 30% design in mid-24. We have a lot of geotech efforts underway. This is just an image from the field here of one of our drilling crews. There is a lot of geotech work left to complete as well. Obviously, we're a major earthwork, major civil project, so a lot of our efforts in the near term will focus on exploration. And really critically, our board has recently approved negotiating purchase of some critical lands. So I think that's a huge step forward for the project. There are some pretty tight criteria of what kind of lands we would look at, but very, very important steps forward. How much does it cost? Well, we looked at that last officially in June of 2021, and it was about $4 billion, $3.9 billion. I've got a few stats here on the screen, but for the most part, you know, this has been reviewed and certainly had a lot of attention paid to it back in 2021. But critically here in 2024, we're going to be updating our cost estimate with a Class 3 cost estimate based on our finalized 30% design. So anticipate that cost being updated in the middle of this year. So much more to come on cost. As you can imagine, it's a very hot topic. Project schedule. We recently had our board take a look at a programmatic schedule for the project and adopt a timeline that really sets the pace here. And I'll say it's an aggressive pace. Where we sit right now, we're in this permitting and water right phase, wrapping up our 30% design here in mid-2024, and then moving to final design. We show this investor commitment block here happening in mid-2025. That's a huge moment for our participants where they'll sign agreements and decide to move forward with the project. It's going to be a major event in California water, and will be based on many factors. But that's well underway and advancing. We have a work plan for the next 2 years. So through the end of 2025, we are funded with cash. At that point, wrapping up the final design and moving into construction, we would be funded through some of these other financing mechanisms that I just mentioned. And so we show our construction here wrapping up in 2032. This is consistent with the board adopted program schedule. And then we move into what is not an insignificant commissioning phase for the project. So, kind of the high level takeaways is we're planning on breaking ground in 2026 and basically being in full operation at the end of 2032. Sounds like a while, and if you've been in this business for a long time, you know that that's a long project, but I'll tell you, it is definitely aggressive. And part of the reason that we're here today and talking about some upcoming procurements is because we need more certainty on this schedule. So with that being said, I kind of wanted to transition a little bit now that I've set the context for this generational effort that's in front of us. Talk a little bit about the authority and our strategy for delivering this project. I've been in this role of engineering and construction manager for a couple of years now, and one of our first tasks that we worked through together was a contracting strategy, and just kind of an overview of how we're going to deliver this project. Obviously it's not one project, it's many. How do we break this up into smaller pieces in a way that helps the authority, helps the contracting community, and helps all of us deliver this for California? And so this is really a summary slide of that risk summary, that packaging, and how we looked at this. So at the top here, in the middle is the authority, and at the top here is our partner facilities. I mentioned that we really rely on existing infrastructure, and some of those existing infrastructures need improvements for the project to work. And so we're looking at partnering with our other agencies to get those things done. So and they're later in the schedule, but our partner facilities, some of the key risk areas that we wanted to manage were ownership and impact operations. So we want those agencies to take those on. And then we have another thing happening later in the project are some of these standalone and specialty contracts. Standalone in the sense, if you look at the top three, they're either isolated from the main site by distance, in the case of the Dunnigan pipeline, and in some case, the Huffmaster Road. They're also sort of easy to segment out and do probably conventional delivery, design, bid, build. And then we have our reservoir clearing component, which needs to happen much later in the project and is a very critical component, but it is sort of standalone and specialty. These other two areas, mitigation and recreation, as you look over here at 3 o'clock on my diagram, those are very specialty from our perspective, and not really in these other packages. And then I have here at the bottom the reservoir. That's actually what we're going to talk a lot more about today. But for this slide's purpose, I really just wanted to highlight the key 4 risk areas the authority saw in this bucket. And those were logistics. And that's probably, an understatement. There's a lot of logistics to building these dams up here in the Maxwell area. Material balance, so moving materials around the site, being very creative about maximizing the yield of our materials that we unearth and making use of them and dealing with spoils and all that. Schedule, this is the longest lead item, the most physical construction on the project. And then of all the areas, the community, this is the most visible, this is the highest labor, the most equipment, the most noise, the most trucks. Our community interactions is just going to be a huge part of a successful delivery of the reservoir features. And then we have our Maxwell sites pumping and generating. So this is our conveyance contract here at 9 o'clock on the diagram. And the key risk areas there are really the hydraulics of the project, which are extremely important. This all has to hang together and work together to move water in and out of the reservoir. The power to feed these, tens of thousands of horsepower of pumps is not insignificant and needs to be very integrated and thought through. The system's controls are all pretty much within this package. This is where a lot of the switches, knobs, buttons, screens will exist for controlling the pumps, generators, all these different things. As well as our O&M considerations, this is where a lot of our wear parts are, and frankly, a lot of our long lead items are. So what we are looking at is sort of looking for partners to help manage the risk areas here that we see. And we'll talk a little bit more about these here, the two big packages. Our adopted contract strategy, which is available to all of you to see, it's been taken up by our board, and I'm just providing sort of a summary of it here, has two very significant CMAR, Construction Manager at Risk, packages. The first is the reservoir package, which is valued at about $2 billion in 2021 dollars. And we're recommending CMAR so we can get early input on some of these massive logistical challenges, the schedule challenges, and the community impacts. In that package is the Sites Dam, the Golden Gate Dam, saddle dams and dikes, and then the associated construction and permanent access roads. Part of the logistics or schedule or community challenges, all three really, is maintaining connectivity for local people to as we build sites, to be able to move around the site's construction site and get to the communities of Ladoga, Stonyford, and the like. So this is a critical component of our project and one that we need to get going on right away. The other package that's of significance is the Maxwell Sites Pumping and Generating package, which is about $1.2 billion. And the reason we went with CMAR, and I guess on both of these, I'll just mention, we really believe in the benefits of early contractor engagement, involvement, and the collaboration between the contractors, the engineers, and the owner. And we went with CMAR for a variety of reasons. And for both these packages, this particular package, we recommended CMAR due to some of the complexities around the system integration. We have our multi-tier inlet outlet, we have our pipelines, we have regulating reservoirs, pumping and generating plants, transmission lines, and then a lot of buildings. And all of this really does need to hang together, work together, and ultimately be commissioned together. This is probably a bit of an eye chart for people, and really I'm flashing this up here to make a couple of points. Our board has considered what role it would like the authority to take in the delivery of the project. And I just want you all to understand as you look at this that the owner, in this case the authority, will be very involved and will be placed in key decision-making roles throughout this organization. And secondly, that our board, if you look at the top of this diagram, is really made up of two arms: the Joint Powers Authority, the Sites Authority, the legal entity, and the Reservoir Committee. And for intensive delivery, it's sort of envisioned that the Reservoir Committee will be approving most decisions in construction. And that group is really practical. It's made up of a lot of general managers and engineers from our organizations throughout the state. And so, under that is a general manager and executive director, and then all these different groups that will be involved heavily in the management of the CMAR and the engineers. Having been through alternative deliveries, understanding the role of the owner is critical. And I just wanted you all to take away that there is a plan to staff this from the authority's perspective and have leadership over these key areas from authority staff. Okay. I'll admit I'm used to a little more interaction, but this is the format here, so I appreciate you all hanging with me. The reservoir package overview. Critically, well, on a project this big, you have to remain a little bit focused. Our focus right now has been on the critical path, and that flows through the reservoir package. So I got this little map here that shows some of the locations that we're going to be showing here in a few minutes. And I'm going to flip through a nice animation that, fingers crossed, will show up for all of you. And if not, it certainly will be as part of the review that you can do on your own. But we have main dams, saddle dams, and dikes, and the roads and the bridge. And there's these blowouts here that show the site's saddle dams and dikes, the site's saddle dams, and the Golden Gate Dam and the site's dam. As well as, you can see the road here working its way through the reservoir, maintaining that connectivity of Sites Ladoga Road to the communities that are west of the project, the critical communities that we want to make sure are continued to be served throughout this project. Let me see here. I'm going to flip through here. All right, so this is pretty fancy. We just had some renderings done of our project, and it's pretty neat to kind of look through these. So this is a rendering of the site's dam. And just, something to keep in mind, these are all proposed to be rock-filled dams. And so, as you look at them, just have that in mind. One of the two main dams for the site's reservoir, the site's dam, is going to be about 267 feet tall, about 780 feet in length, and constructed with a diversion structure around it that is about 12 feet in diameter, just beyond its northern abutment. So this is a very significant structure. And if you have been in this area and have driven out into the valley, this is will be on top of what is Sites Ladoga Road and on top of an existing bridge. So that kind of orients you in a nice narrow canyon. Flipping over here to the Golden Gate Dam, which is our largest dam. It's approximately 2 miles north of Sites Dam, and it'll be 287 feet tall and about 2,200 feet in length. And this is looking toward the west from the Sac Valley side. You can see the water line here and a couple of islands. Critically, and something we've talked about with our board, has been the opportunity for value engineering on the Golden Gate Dam and looking at a possible realignment of that dam. And that's certainly something we would like to get some help with from our CMAR. And then next, I'll just mention the 9 saddle dams and dikes, which on their own would represent a pretty massive project for most. And they're proposed on the northern reach of the reservoir, and they vary in height between 12 feet and 107 feet, and lengths from 250 to about 3,500 feet. And as I mentioned, all of these facilities are envisioned to be earth and rock filled, similar to dams at Diamond Valley Lake that are in Southern California. So if you're familiar with that construction, that's a good reference point. And then lastly, not insignificant component of this project is the Sites Ladoga Road realignment. It's about 1.5 miles of new road segment crossing the reservoir with up to 2 bridge structures. This is still being designed. These are both about 150 feet tall and lengths between about 3,400 and 4,000 feet. The road realignment is absolutely critical to maintain access to areas east and west of the reservoir. So just keep that community connectivity. Just flipping through here. So that's the facilities, and a nice visual representation of the magnitude and scale. And just to zero in a little bit more on what is going to be included in the CMAR package that's coming up, it's the dam and dike components, and then here's some stats on those. I kind of breezed through these in the last presentation, and here's the obligatory triangle showing the dam construction. About 22 miles of roads, and then the new bridge. So these are the components, the high level scope. Okay. Now to the meat of today, which is really what is going on from a procurement perspective on sites. So we're currently in the procurement of legal firms to support the site's authority during construction. The selection and award of that is expected in March of 2024 at our joint board meeting. The scope of that I've just listed here. It's really about helping us with our procurement and making sure we do everything by the book. Standardizing our construction contract documents, our front end here, helping us implement that contract, and if needed, some claims support, and also some environmental mitigation services, as well as helping negotiate project labor agreements, draft and negotiate those. So that's ongoing, and we'll be under contract soon. For the actual reservoir package, we are looking at a two-step procurement process where we will do an RFQ followed by an RFP. We'll start with an RFQ, we'll get some statement of qualifications, and we'll develop a short list of firms that are qualified. And we're going to look at qualifications, experience, capability, and capacity, and the past performance. It's massive project, contractors or teams are going to have to bring a pretty good set of qualifications. Step two, we'll do an RFP, we'll look at those, and we'll award. We're probably going to look, and we haven't really delved into how we're going to make this selection. We're doing qualifications and experience, of course, carrying over from the RFQ. We're going to look at the approach and the technical solutions, and we're ultimately going to make a best value determination. And the initial award that we're looking at here is for the first year. We're looking at about a little less than 250,000 that we have budgeted, and that is really to help us focus that review on those critical things as we're in this sort of cash conscious mode that we're in now. We're anticipating.
JP, somebody muted you.
JP, we lost you.
Oh, someone muted me.
Yeah, it was back at we're anticipating was where we lost you.
Anticipating on the. Oh, sorry.
You might want to just start the slide over. Sorry.
That's okay. But is my audio okay? Did someone mute me because I
yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, we're looking at two-step procurement process with an RFQ followed by an RFP. And typical RFQ, we're going to look for qualifications and experience, capability, capacity, and past performance. And then in step two, we're going to look at the approach, technical solutions, and ultimately look for the best value here. The authority has a long view on this. It's a long project. They're looking for the right partner. The initial award is going to be relatively focused. And that award is going to focus on, providing input on the Golden Gate Dam that we're working on the project schedule, and some of the coordination with the community. We'll develop that focused scope of work. We're anticipating around $250,000 we've set aside for that work while we're still in this cash conscious mode, and before we move into financing. We anticipate going through a similar process for conveyance, and likely, you'll see it's the same organization, so some similarities in the process for mitigation as well. We're still working on that. Most of our efforts right now, just given the long lead of the dams, has been focused on the reservoir, but we plan on applying this to kind of how we do business going forward. Preliminary timeline. everybody is always interested in when, it's all great to talk about the project. And then what about the schedule? We had our info session today. We're looking at April 18th for a pre-RFQ briefing. We're still talking a little bit about the format of that briefing. The goal would be to focus on that one. It would be really about the reservoir CMAR specifically, not just the project overall, but zeroing in on that, introducing a little bit more detail on how that process is going to work before the RFQ hits the street. And then in summer, pending board authorization, we'll issue our reservoir CMAR RFQ. That will kick off the procurement process formally. The board does need to approve that. They have given us direction to start this process and develop this information and to host things like this and get understand the interest out there and the contractor engagement. But they really do need to take a look at where they're at with all their permits and agreements before that reservoir CMAR RFQ hits the street. They're taking this very, very seriously, as they should, because you all collectively will spend a lot of time and effort responding to something like this, and we want to make sure we're really ready. But I think a lot of the actions the board has taken to date indicate that they want to see this advance, but it's very prudent to take another look at where we're at with our permits and our timing. Then in the fall, we'll have our SOQs due, and then we'll develop our short list in the fall. And then sometime in the winter, I anticipate issuing our RFP and awarding the CMAR in spring of 2025. And I always envision right after that hitting the ground running with the engineering team and taking on some of this work. So that's our schedule. And again, you don't have to frantically write this down. We'll share all this. This will all be up on our contractor outreach website. But everybody wants to know, how are you going to pick? And while I don't have a specific answer right now, I will say that our values really will reflect not only how we do the work, but how we select a partner. I've put on here the values that came from our 2020 strategic plan. And, we're an organization that really likes to go back and revisit these and make sure we're delivering on them. These are meaningful and serious to us. Respect for local communities, trust and integrity, safety, shared responsibility, accountability, and transparency, being stewards of the environment, meeting our commitments, diversity, inclusivity, and proactive innovation. Just to pause on that one, I mean, a big part of the reason that we're looking to bring on a contractor early is to get that mitigation baked into the project, or that innovation baked into the project. So how we make our selection? Fitting in with these values is going to be critical. Cost management will help keep the project affordable for our participants, which is absolutely critical to our success. Adhering to a schedule, having a realistic plan and sticking to it. The project does have a sense of urgency. I mean, these last 3 years are a great example where our project would have really helped California navigate this wild set of circumstances that we seem to face from a water perspective. Quality workmanship. We want partners who want to do excellent work, and it's certainly going to matter for longevity. We have many reservoirs in the state that are over 100 years old. We'd like to beat that. And we'll be looking for a CMAR partner and a team member, community member, not just an implementation firm. So, I'm not assigning points to these things yet, obviously, but I'll tell you, these are the real criteria that matter to our team and to our board. Okay. Next steps. We are going to post this presentation and a recording of this meeting to the site's website. Can't imagine why you'd want to watch this again, but if you do, you can. A follow-up survey is going to be sent in the coming weeks. It'll allow you to add yourself to our distribution list, and that's really important. We do send out a lot of communication, and there's always a lot going on our project. And so that'll be sent out to you, and we'll set that up on our website. Our outreach will be conducted in the coming months, and the first event is going to focus, as I mentioned, on the upcoming CMAR procurement, probably focused on those firms that are interested in submitting an SOQ for that project. Any questions you have about the construction, the procurement, what's going on, can be directed to Terry Boland. You can direct them to me. I know a lot of you have my contact information. But I could tell you, you're much more likely to get a timely response from Terry, and she does a great job of managing these and making sure everyone stays connected on our project. And, you know, the last thing I did want to mention is, and I didn't put a link in here, but it's something you all should check out. There's an amazing virtual tour. I think most of our clips in this presentation come from it. That's posted on our website and on YouTube, and you all should really check that out. And you know, if you post anything about our project, we're using the hashtag #BuildSites now. You know, we're trying to get the word out. Our project is getting more attention, but you know, we believe we're trying to do something really good, really important, and you know, appreciate all your help on that front. And that concludes my remarks today. I really appreciate all of you joining and your interest in our project. It's going to take all of us to pull this massive effort off, this regional, national project of significance and this generational effort. So I just want to thank you all for joining today. Thanks for your continued interest and advocacy, and sure appreciate you, and I hope you have a great day. Thank you, everyone.